Hi there, I'm Construction Gamer and this is the UK Northern Powerhouse on Transport Fever 2. This will be episode number 71 in the series, and in this episode we're finally going to start HS2. Well, I say finally, some people might differ, think that it shouldn't be built, but I'm not one of those people. I think it should definitely be built, and we're going to be building it in this series as it does come up towards this part of the world, Crewe on towards Manchester, and then you've got the eastern leg as well as far as Leeds, which we'll be building. We're currently on board this East Midlands Railway service from Nottingham to Mansfield, which we connected in the last episode, and I just noticed whilst we were on board that train that there's a junction there which looked particularly hideous. Now it must be an older junction that I'd built previously a long time ago. This needs fixing before we do anything. It's even got a semaphore signal on there, I think. Possibly. Did I just see a semaphore? So this needs fixing before we do anything. Now there are some UK railways and catenary that have just been recently released on the Steam Workshop, and someone did ask if I'm going to upgrade the rails to that. I haven't got any plans to do that in a minute, because I'm sure many will appreciate just how big this map has gotten to be now, especially those who have subscribed to it on Steam Workshop, because the episode 70 save file is now available on the Steam Workshop, and it is take it for granted sometimes when I'm playing this, but I've been building this for about a year, or just over a year now, or possibly, and it must be definitely over a year, and the map itself is enormous, so can't really go around kind of upgrading every single track. I know I could have potentially built this little bit with the UK track, but I've just decided not to in this particular instance. I might revisit it at some stage, but I haven't got any plans currently, so let's just take a look at that. So that's better, isn't it, already? Don't like having bits of glitching track through the sleepers and things like that, so that's fixed. And the next thing I wanted to do is, before I forget, there's a couple of trains that I need to name after the tier 2, tier 3 patrons who kindly support the channel, but I wanted to head over towards Liverpool as we really start to struggle, and I just wanted to take, because I didn't do this in in episode 69 when we took a bit of a look around the map. I just wanted to see how many vehicles we had. We have 249 trains and 391 road vehicles, so that's plenty, isn't it? I think I've got almost all of the services operating that I wanted to get operating on this, apart from, I've done Matlock as well. That's going to be a time lapse which I'll hope to get out pretty soon. So Matlock's now connected, and I think that kind of finishes off the existing rail network, so we can really start to move on to HS2 and even HS3, I think. What did I want to do? First of all, I want to name some trains. So we've already got plenty named. Let's find some nice ones. So we've got whatever this is. So this will be the Any Warrior 4005 Express, and then we've got, what else have we got around here? We've got another Transpennine one. We'll give that a name as well. So that'll be the John Express, and then got something, another Transpennine one. Why not? Be the Transport Gamer Express there, and the tier 1 patrons will be getting some trains named after them shortly as well. That's every tier 1 patrons every 10 episodes, tier 2-3 patrons every 6 episodes. So there we are. Now on to the tricky business of building HS2. We're going to be building this in the phases as they're kind of set out. So we're going to be doing phase 2A. We're not doing phase 1 because that's like down here somewhere near Lichfield, a bit further south, but we're going to be doing phase 2A, which comes past Stafford and then around Stafford and then on towards Crewe, and then we're going to be doing phase 2B West, which is... Actually, no, what we're going to do, we're going to do phase 2A, which makes sense, obviously. Phase 2B West, kind of phase... Oh no, that just takes a little bit confusing, but it's going to be split up anyway, because we've got... Once we come from Crewe, we start to go to phase 2B. We start to go towards Manchester Airport and Manchester City Centre, which will probably take an episode, and then there's a further spur going from around... Not sure where it'd be, just south of Manchester Airport. No, is it? No, it's not. It's north of Manchester Airport. I don't know, I'll figure it out. But there's another branch which goes to Wigan, so that's probably another episode. And then we're going to head over to the east, where we've got the remainder of phase 2B, which is around East Midlands Airport. I think there are new branches, aren't there, which go to serve Sheffield, and possibly Chesterfield, and then we want to run up to connection to Leeds, new station at Leeds, and a connection to the East Coast Main Line, which I've still got to determine. So it's pretty complicated, and it's going to take a lot of doing, particularly the grade separated junctions, which I seem to be putting off a little bit. But before I do that, I think the West Coast Main Line needs to be rebuilt. I think what I want to do is just want to use the eraser tool, make sure we haven't got any magnets for the automatic train warning system, which I did put down. I tried to do a little bit of detailing on the West Coast Main Line. Just want to make sure I haven't got any of those in place, because they're obviously assets which don't get deleted when you delete the track. Now, first things first, we want to sort of set out the sort of angle HS2 is coming from. I'm not going to build the station because I haven't decided what I'm going to do for that yet. Obviously, there isn't a station near Stafford in real life, so I don't know quite what I'm going to do, so we'll figure that out at a later date. And obviously, we want this to be nice and fast, and we want to use the slab track. Now, I'm pretty certain that HS2 throughout its entire length will be slab track now. We've got version... what's that one? Now, who won the slab track award? I'm just going to have a quick look. Okie dokie, so it was a consortium which included PORR UK, who won the contract for the slab track, which is actually running as far north as Crewe. It does include the package up towards Crewe, which includes 2A. And on a quick look on Google, most of the images which I can find of poor slab track, I'll call it, rather than PORR, seems to have like these holes in it. So this is the version 1 slab track. I mean, it might be completely different by the time we come to build HS2, but that's like the most accurate, I think, of the tracks. So we'll use version 2 for this. And that, yeah, what was I doing there? I was actually putting some track down, but I think I do actually want to start with one of the most difficult sections. I think it's going to be the run up towards Crewe on the West Coast Main Line. But what we were doing before I kind of went off on a tangent to research who was the manufacturer of the slab track was actually we're going to have to realign the West Coast Main Line in order to make it a little bit more curvaceous and a little bit more accurate as well with regards to where it interacts with HS2, because actually HS2 appears to cross the West Coast Main Line twice almost, I think. Yeah, so I think we're going to push it right back as far back as this. Now it is very, very complicated, this junction. I'm gonna do my best to try and recreate it. I did look at one of the quite technical drawings that they have of the junction, but still it is still quite a challenge. So first of all, we want the West Coast Main Line to run off on that sort of angle, maybe in a little bit of a cutting, just to make our life a little bit easier, which I will we'll see why in a minute. But basically we want West Coast Main Line to curve out a little bit, and we will have it in a bit of a cutting like that. Obviously it doesn't need to be 186 miles per hour, but we are still using the vanilla high-speed tracks, but yeah, we'll ignore that. Maybe we'll put some curves in it to actually reduce the speed to something approaching 125. But yeah, this does need to run off here a bit. I think it still wants to come down. Now I think for the most part HS2 does go over the West Coast Main Line, so we will replicate that. And yeah, this wants to go sort of over in that sort of kind of direction. Maybe actually no, just to about there probably. So in actual fact, the West Coast Main Line around this region is a lot more curvaceous than I had it. I did have it running quite straight, so it is better that we're actually making it a little bit more curvaceous, a little bit more accurate than it otherwise would have been. So we'll chuck that in there. We'll have to make sure we keep the game unpaused, otherwise we will end up with trains in the wrong sort of locations. Although having said that, if we try and have we got any junctions? I don't think we have, although we've got a little bit of weirdness with the West Coast Main Line going on there as well, haven't we? So we'll push this right back, because that looked a little bit odd. I'm not entirely sure. It's not, obviously I haven't snapped it correctly, have I, on the up down, which I think these are the up down fasts possibly. And let's get that snapped correctly this time, just making sure we are at least maintaining 125. Although I can't really see there being much of an issue. It should be even more curvaceous than I'm making it now, but we are just gonna connect it up. Are you snapped correctly now, hopefully? And you're colliding with something, of course. Maybe I've left a little bit of track. No, we've still got this weirdness going on with the West Coast Main Line. The West Coast Main Line needs rebuilding all the way, pretty much to there. Now let's see if I can do this in one go. This time, no. Because there's a piece of track. Right, chuck that in. And that, like so, and that should be the West Coast Main Line done. It probably, actually, could be a little bit more curvaceous. I want to get this right and kind of just, call it a day on this. Don't want to have to come back to it, so if you can get it right first time or second time, then all's the better. So if you can throw the West Coast Main Line out a little bit more towards the east, still in a little bit of a cutting, maybe a little bit of a curve, because what we have to bear in mind as well is HS2 wants to be as straight as physically possible. So if we can actually make the West Coast Main Line curve it around HS2, then that's probably going to make things a little bit easier. So we'll continue in that cutting. That doesn't want to be 108, it still wants to be a reasonable speed. 135, that's better. And can that just connect onto there? And can we main? Yeah, that's much better, I think. So it's a little bit more curvaceous, and it does allow us our HS2 crossings. And what we will try and build, in a minute, is the connection to head the West Coast Main Line, which I seem to be kind of procrastinating and putting off, because it is tricky looking from what I can see. So what we will do first of all is we'll put in a dead straight section of track crossing the West Coast Main Line like so, which is colliding, which is not a problem because we have a whole load of new bridges, which hopefully is going to give us a crossing. Now, where are you? I have some new China Railways track bridges. T-beam 99 miles per hour. No, your existing ones, what are you? Cement bridge 99 miles per hour. That just looks like a vanilla, changed a little bit. What's that? That looks a bit more modern, doesn't it? That looks a little bit more like what we need, but we do need to go up a little bit higher on this side just to get over that catenary, because we are kind of touching it. So it's right down the bottom. That's nice and modern looking with some slender pillars. That's what we want. 186 miles per hour still. We are on the wrong track as well. Let's see if we can do this with slab track version 1 we're using. So 1, 2, over. Right, it was about this point that for some unknown reason to me, the audio just decided to cut out. So the voice input just stopped recording. I don't know why. It's very strange indeed. But I thought instead of just binning this episode or kind of re-recording it, I'd turn it into a bit of a speed build time lapse. Go a little bit kernel failure with the speed build and the voiceover. I don't tend to do this because I'm not very good at talking over footage that I've already recorded, because I more often than not can't remember what I've done. But I've decided I'll keep this footage anyway, because it was quite a complex build and I would like to have shown it. Now I do remember I did talk about the speed which we're going for on HS2. So basically a lot's made of the kind of the route being built for speeds of about 250 miles per hour, 400 kilometers per hour, but the actual operation of the line won't be that fast when it opens. I think the maximum speed of the infrastructure itself, so the track and the signalling, will be set up for 225 miles per hour speed. So that we're going to aim for speeds of around 200 to 225 miles per hour with this ballasted, with this not ballasted, it's slab track, with the slab track, which is capable of higher speeds. So yeah, I think in operation actually HS2, the services day to day, speaking to various people about it on social media, the day-to-day running of the service will be about 180 to 200 miles per hour anyway. It won't be actually, the services themselves won't operate at 225 miles per hour throughout the entire route, but they will, if needs be able to run at speeds of up to 225 miles per hour. Let's say if the service is running late, or maybe they had to kind of adjust a service that was held up on the West Coast Main Line. So yeah, we are going to aim for a 200 to 225 miles per hour speed where possible. This particular junction isn't one of those areas where it is possible, because it is quite complicated. So what we've got to do is we've got to grade separate a junction over HS2 itself. So looking at it now, HS2, the core HS2 line goes towards the left of Crewe station and then into a tunnel which leads underneath Crewe, and then what we're building now is the grade separated junction, which actually goes over HS2 and over the West Coast Main Line, and then joins the West Coast Main Line to the right. So it kind of HS2 goes both sides of the West Coast Main Line. That's what I could figure out from the technical drawings. Now the technical drawings are a bit of a mess. Well, they're not a mess, but they are quite difficult to understand if you're not an engineer. But I tried to kind of look at them as best as I could, and one of the problems is the actual size of these technical drawings are absolutely enormous, and when you open them in a browser it just becomes really hard. The computer doesn't like it. Even my computer doesn't like opening these absolutely enormous PDFs, so it was difficult to zoom right in to look at it. But I think I've got the basics of what this junction is supposed to look like. It is massively elongated, it's not to scale, but hopefully it replicates what's there in real life. Now you can see we're trying to get over HS2 here and trying to get the core HS2 line, which goes underneath Crewe, underneath this grade separated junction, which is a little bit tricky. It does take a lot of doing, and even after I've finished recording this episode I do go back to the junction, because the bit that kind of goes over HS2 that I'm trying to build at the minute, I think the speed I managed to achieve something like 57 miles per hour, which is a little bit rubbish. Now the only kind of saving grace is that the trains that are coming off on these junctions that I'm building now, or these slips, will be slowing down or speeding up to stop at Crewe, because almost certainly if the train is coming off HS2 onto this branch, let's call it, then it will be stopping at Crewe almost certainly. I think that's probably a given. Maybe a few services won't stop at Crewe, but I think the vast majority will be, certainly when phase 2B is finished, which takes the line from Crewe up towards Manchester and up towards the West Coast Main Line just south of Wigan. But yeah, you can see here I'm really struggling to try, and I want to achieve some sort of decent speed. 57 is a little bit rubbish, but at the same time I don't want to be glitching track into the catenary, and yeah, we've got to build some sort of bridge which can clear the catenary but kind of come down quick enough to actually join the HS2 line itself. So it does take a little bit of doing. Maybe it's best that I'm doing this as a speed build, because I think you might be able to sense my frustration at trying to get this correct and trying to make it look nice at the same time, because yes, the junction will be workable, but I think the first iteration, which I finished at the end of this episode, isn't the most attractive and isn't the fastest either. So I do a little bit of work, but you'll see that in the next episode. I'll show you what I managed to complete with this junction to make it a little bit faster. I think the top speed I managed is about 70 in the end, which isn't fantastic, but I think given the constraints of the scale of the map and the complexity of this junction, I think it's about as best as I can do. At least the saving grace again will be that the trains will be leaving the HS2 core network and kind of getting out the way of the trains which are going to be carrying on underneath Crewe at somewhere approaching 200 miles per hour. Now I'm not entirely sure what the speed of the tunnels will be under Crewe, because I think the tunnels, is it 8 kilometres, an 8 kilometre long tunnel or something? It is quite a long tunnel underneath Crewe, and I'm not entirely sure what their speeds will be in the tunnels for HS2, but I think I'll probably maintain somewhere around the 200 mark for like the core HS2 line as it is. You can see there a little bit of a roller coaster going on. That will be fixed. It won't look quite so bad. And I think that little bit then was me probably talking about how it looks like a roller coaster, which is not what we want. Now I did go on to say that one of the benefits of modern high-speed trains is they are better able to go kind of up steep gradients, not massively steep gradients, but because they're so much lighter and more powerful than your standard trains, then they are a bit better equipped to go up steep gradients. I think there's some lines in France on the high-speed network which, you know, the inclines are quite steep. I think there's a famous picture somewhere of the line being built. So although we can, if needs be, go up and down quite steep gradients, I don't want it to look like a roller coaster. So it's trying to strike that balance with working all the time within the limits of kind of the scale that we're working with. So yeah, there we go. That's the tunnel that's going to go underneath Crewe. That goes off towards Manchester Airport and on towards Manchester, and then up towards just south of Wigan, and for a connection onto the West Coast Main Line. Next thing we've got to do is connect this section of the HS2 network into the West Coast Main Line south of Crewe. Now, having said that, all services are more than likely going to stop at Crewe, which have come off of this branch. We need to get over onto the leftmost platform for the northbound, the downline services. So that's what we need to do, is we need to get a couple of switches. It does create another little bit of a bottleneck crossing from here all the way over to that platform, but it shouldn't be too bad. And then obviously we just need a basic connection for the southbound lines onto the other platform as well, so we can stop all of these services on this branch at Crewe. And we're just putting in the normal ballasted track just to create that connection from the HS2 slab track onto the ballasted track in the lead up to Crewe. And I'm going to have to do some work with signalling around Crewe to try and make this work. Basically, it is a little bit of a mess, but I think the only kind of thing with it is a lot of the Avanti services will be diverting onto Crewe, so I think I'll completely recast the schedule for the Avanti services. Now, there will be existing Avanti services that continue on the West Coast Main Line. They're not being gotten rid of altogether, but like the whole point of HS2 is the non-stop services, which call at very few stations south of Crewe. They'll go on HS2 rather than the West Coast Main Line, and the existing Avanti services will call up more places to give better connectivity across the country. So places like things like the Liverpool service, which goes Liverpool, Runcorn, and then often non-stop to London Euston, which doesn't provide very good connectivity. So there'll be a HS2 Liverpool Euston service, which will stop at Crewe and then non-stop, and then there'll be like a Liverpool, Runcorn, and another service which kind of stops at other places like Rugby and Milton Keynes, giving better connectivity in there. I think I'm just talking about where it branches off towards Wigan and Manchester. I need to take a look at that properly to try and determine where the actual junctions are in relation to Manchester Airport. Again, that's another kind of complex area. And just north of Crewe, with the Phase 2B, there are some design refinements that have been made to allow for a northern connection to HS2. Now, there wasn't going to be one in the original plans. HS2 was just going to go straight underneath Crewe, head towards Manchester, and that was going to be it. But there is going to be a junction similar to this north of Crewe, which allows for Manchester services to stop at Crewe, or some Manchester services. And I think there's going to be a Manchester Airport, Crewe, Birmingham HS2 services as well is potentially proposed. So I'm not sure. It's not a definite yet, but I think they do want to put in a northern connection along with some other little connections for a potential HS3, but we'll talk more about them in future episodes when we get closer to... Well, when we build the line from Manchester Airport up towards Wigan, there is another complex set of junctions which we've got to kind of talk about and figure out, which may basically get... If they ever build a HS3 from Liverpool, which goes kind of Manchester and then across the Pennines, there is a connection from HS3 onto HS2 and then off HS2 and then back onto HS3 again, which is sounds a little bit complicated, and it is, but we'll definitely figure that out. So coming towards the end of the build now, it's still a bit ugly. I do, like I said, do some work to this to make it look a little bit nicer and try and improve some of the speeds where possible, just to get the best possible speeds. I think what are we looking at? I think 67 it came up with there, just looking at the speed profiles, which is a little bit rubbish considering it's supposed to be a high speed track. But the end product, once I've finished messing around, doing a little bit of detailing, doing some work with retaining walls, it doesn't look too bad. I'm pleased with the end results, which you will see in the next episodes. I'll give you a good look at that. So I think I'm pretty much done for this build. I've shown you like how the junction is supposed to look. I think hopefully you get a reasonable idea of what it's supposed to look like. Oh, and yeah, and just before I finish up, here's me talking about which trains I want to use, for which I've decided I'm either going to use the Alstom AGV, the Automotrice Grande Vitesse, which hasn't been very built of these. But interesting fact about these, they did use the AGV as a reference train when they were referencing speed profiles and energy consumption profiles for HS2. I mean, this train is quite old now. It is getting on for... It's like 2010 when this train was starting to be produced, I think. So again, this is quite old. I think a lot of people would probably like me to see me use the Class 373 Eurostar, but again, that's a very old train now. It's getting... Was it over 30 years old now? No, something like, almost over 30 years old. It is quite old. The other one I was going to use, but which didn't come up on the menu for some reason, was a train on the workshop. It's named the Bombardier Polaris on the workshop, but in reality it's just a China Railways H6A reskin, but it does actually look quite good. And it's got a high top speed of 200 miles per hour as well, and it does look a lot like it's a lot more it's a very modern looking very high speed train, and it looks like some of the trains which have kind of been proposed for HS2 as part of the procurement of the rolling stock. So I will try and show you that in the next episode. So that is on the workshop, it's Bombardier Polaris, but you need the CRH-6A train on which it's based, which is just basically a reskin. So they're the two trains which I'm thinking of. I couldn't find any other high-speed trains I couldn't find any other very high-speed trains with 200 miles per hour top speeds on the workshop. But if there are others which you think might do the job better, then do let me know. But otherwise, I'm probably going to go with the Alstom AGV or the Bombardier Polaris. So there we are, coming towards the end of the build now. I think I'm going to leave it there and say until next time, bye bye.